My party crossed the line when one senator broke the script on national TV. Imagine you're live on national television. The panel is set up to corner you, cameras rolling, lights blazing, every question designed to push you into one simple move: blame the other side and stick to the script. That's not what happened. That's not what Senator John Fetterman did. On The View, the host tried to walk him right into the standard shutdown narrative. Republicans are holding the government hostage, Democrats are fighting for the people, the polls are on your side. So why give in now? Instead, Fetterman looked straight into the camera and said 6 words nobody expected from a sitting Democratic senator. My party crossed the line. In that moment, the air in the studio changed. The audience gasped, the hosts froze, and millions watching realized that, for once, someone in power wasn't going to hide behind talking points. He didn't say Republicans crossed the line. He didn't say the system failed us. He said my party crossed the line. He took ownership, he broke rank, he put principle over loyalty, and that single choice ripped open a fracture that's been running through the Democratic Party for years, usually hidden behind unified messaging and discipline, now exposed live in real time. Let's slow this down and walk through what actually happened and why it matters. For weeks, Democratic leadership had a strategy. The idea was simple: refuse to negotiate, let the shutdown drag on, let the pain build, let public opinion turn harder and harder against Republicans. On paper, it looked smart. Polls showed somewhere around 55–65% of Americans blaming Republicans for the mess. Democratic strategists were thrilled. Chuck Schumer believed he finally had leverage. But leverage always has a cost. Fetterman spelled out that cost on national TV. He talked about millions of Americans whose food assistance was about to disappear, SNAP benefits, food stamps for families who were already stretched thin. Imagine being a grandmother trying to buy groceries for your grandkids and finding out overnight that the card you rely on might not work, not because you did anything wrong, but because Washington wanted another week of pressure. He talked about military families going weeks without paychecks, soldiers deployed overseas, spouses back home staring at a mortgage and a bank balance that don't line up, all because their pay got caught inside a political standoff. He talked about air travel becoming less safe, not as a talking point, but as a direct consequence of air traffic controllers, TSA, and key staff working without pay, burning out, or stepping away while the shutdown dragged on. Then he drew the line. That was a red line for me that I can't cross as a Democrat. That's what landed. Not the performance, not the optics. The decision to say, I'm not going to keep using real people's lives as leverage to win a PR battle. And here's the key. This wasn't just one man having a sudden crisis of conscience. This was the final crack in a dam that had been straining for weeks. The shutdown didn't just happen. It was a calculated strategy. Refuse to move funding bills. Let agencies hit the wall. Let the pain roll downhill onto workers, families, and services. Assume Republicans break first. For a while, it looked like the plan might work. But as the days went on, the human cost stopped being theoretical. Federal workers were missing paychecks. Families on food assistance were counting cans. National parks were closed or barely functioning. Air travel delays were mounting. At some point, the tactic stopped looking like leverage and started looking like cruelty. That's when 8 Democrats, Fetterman among them, broke ranks and voted with Republicans to reopen the government. Not because they suddenly agreed with the GOP on policy, not because they switched teams, but because they looked at the damage and said, enough, this has to stop. The response inside the party was immediate and vicious. Progressive leaders like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Bernie Sanders blasted the moderates. They called it betrayal. They called it surrender. They called it catastrophic. Governor Gavin Newsom publicly criticized the decision as weak. Even Marjorie Taylor Greene, from the other side, was criticizing Republicans for allowing the deal, yet somehow her outrage got twisted into a bizarre talking point for Democrats online. It was chaos. And in the middle of that chaos, Fetterman stayed calm and said, in effect, I don't need a lecture from people in deep blue districts who never face real political consequences. I represent Pennsylvania, steel towns, coal communities, working families. They don't care about your purity tests. They care about putting food on the table and keeping the lights on. That's not a line you deliver because it polls well. That's a line you deliver because you're done pretending. To understand why this moment hit so hard, you have to understand who Fetterman is. A few years ago, he was barely on the national radar. He didn't look like a typical senator. He didn't sound like a typical senator. He didn't test well in the consultant's imagination of what a politician should be. Then he had a stroke. Not a minor scare, a serious, life-altering event, the kind that ends careers and forces you to confront everything. He has talked openly about what followed. Once lying in bed, unable to move like he used to, unable to think clearly, his family unable to reach him emotionally, a depression so deep he considered ending his life. He went through all of that in public. He took a brutal debate while still recovering and was mocked nationally for it. His opponents used his condition against him. Commentators wrote him off as finished. But he didn't walk away. He got help. He clawed his way back. And in the process, something changed. He decided that if he was going to stay in politics, it wasn't going to be on anyone else's terms. No more pretending. No more scripts. No more playing along to protect a career he'd already nearly lost. That's the man who went on The View. That's the man who said, "My party crossed a line." You can disagree with him on policy, but it's hard to deny that he believes what he's saying. That authenticity is exactly what makes him dangerous to his own side. Because the moment he told the truth, he exposed something the Democratic Party has been trying to keep off camera. They are not united. They are not one seamless machine. They are deeply fractured between old guard moderates who still believe in compromise and a new wave of progressives who see compromise as betrayal, between working class roots and elite coastal priorities, between those who think winning elections means listening to voters and those who think it means lecturing them. When that split shows up on a roll call, it matters. When it shows up on daytime TV, it becomes impossible to hide. The media tried to clean it up. CNN panels spun narratives. Some pundits defended the shutdown strategy. Others carefully suggest that Fetterman might have a point. Then came a quiet but devastating moment on air when Republican commentator Scott Jennings pointed out a simple fact. Republicans had voted over a dozen times to fund the very programs Democrats were accusing them of trying to slash. Democrats had voted against those same bills more than a dozen times. So, who exactly was playing politics with people's lives? The silence after that question said more than any monologue. And that's the thing about truth on live television. Once it slips through, once someone says what everyone privately knows but isn't supposed to admit, it moves faster than talking points can contain. Clips of Fetterman's comments went viral. Conservatives shared them as proof. Independents shared them as a rare moment of sanity. Even some Democrats shared them because they were tired of being told that loyalty to the party mattered more than doing the obvious right thing. The attempt to corner Fetterman backfired. Instead of being pressured into the narrative, he used the platform to reset it. This moment wasn't just about Democrats. The same fault lines exist in the Republican Party. Pragmatists versus purists. Governors versus social media performers. Lawmakers who want to govern versus lawmakers who want to go viral. Fetterman's sentence cut through all of it. Before we are Democrats, Republicans, we are Americans. And the government's first duty is to function. That sounds basic. But right now, it's almost radical. Because shutdowns have become tools. Leverage points. Content. Opportunities to show strength by hurting the very people you claim to represent. Fetterman refused that logic. He said, in effect, you don't starve families to win messaging wars. You don't risk air safety to gain a few points in a poll. You don't withhold pay from soldiers to prove how tough you are. At some point, the tactic becomes the abuse. At some point, you have to say, line crossed. So what happens next? Does Fetterman leave the Democratic Party? Some Republicans hope so. Lindsey Graham has publicly said Fetterman is one of the few Democrats who could actually survive politically right now because people trust him. Lord Trump has said Fetterman has more in common with Trump-style working-class populism than with the modern Democratic coalition. And if you look at some of his positions, strong support for Israel, skepticism toward the progressive wish list, focus on kitchen table economics over culture war theatrics, you can see why they say that. He doesn't fit neatly in the current party mold. But he hasn't switched sides, at least not yet. Despite everything, he still believes the Democratic Party should be the party of working people. He still thinks it can be, if enough people inside are willing to stop worshiping leverage and start remembering why they're there. Whether he's right, time will tell. But his stand has already changed the conversation. It's given cover to other moderate Democrats who've been thinking the same thing but were afraid to say it. It's forced leadership to confront the possibility that the hardline strategy backfired. It's reminded millions of Americans that not everyone in Washington is completely consumed by the game. Meanwhile, Schumer's position looks weaker. Progressives are furious, certain they had Republicans on the ropes, and moderates ruined it. Moderates are exhausted, tired of being dragged into positions they don't believe in to satisfy activists who never have to campaign in swing states. Republicans are watching, quietly pleased. A divided opponent is a strategic gift. But behind all the tactics, the polling, and the infighting, there's a deeper question for you and for the country. Do we still want leaders who will tell the truth even when it hurts their own side? Or do we only reward those who never break the script? Fetterman's story resonates because he's already lost everything once. A stroke, depression, public humiliation, the feeling of being finished, and yet he's still there. When someone comes back from that, they're dangerous in the best way, because they're not afraid of losing a title. They're afraid of wasting whatever time they've got left by lying. That's what you heard when he said, "My party crossed a line." Not a stunt, not a poll-tested phrase. A man who's been through hell deciding he's not going to co-sign nonsense anymore. The question is whether we reward that. Do voters punish him for breaking rank or reward him for being honest? Do we keep voting for leverage and performance, or for people who will at least try to align their vote with their oath? I'd like to believe we reward courage. I'd like to believe most Americans across parties are tired of being treated like we can't see the game that's being played. So let me end the way Fetterman did by putting it back on you. Did he prove there's still honesty left in politics? Or did he just burn his last bridge? Is this the start of something bigger, a realignment where character finally outweighs party label? Or will this be one more moment swallowed by the next news cycle? If you think moments like this matter, amplify them. Because the more people see them, the harder it becomes for anyone to pretend everything is fine, the harder it becomes to deny that we desperately need leaders willing to say, "My party crossed the line, and I won't cross it with them." That's what leadership looks like when it isn't fed through consultants, focus groups, and spin. Whether this turns into a turning point, that part isn't on him. It's on us.